So good morning. Today's daf is Yevamot Daf Nun Chet. We are at the bottom of Nun Zayin number Bet. And yesterday we explained the Mishnah that we learned at the end of Monday, and we detailed the following dispute regarding the daughter of a Kohen. If she's either a widow who does erisin with a Kohen Gadol, or a divorcee or chalutza who does erisin with a kohen. So in each of those cases, those are marriages and marital relations that are prohibited. But of course, erisin is just the first step towards marriage. It does not, the second step being nisuin. And so here the person has only done the first step. They have not actually, because erisin does not enable a couple to engage in marital relations, they have not yet consummated their relationship. And so even though if they did consummate their relationship, the woman in this relationship would now be effectively prohibited from being connected to a Kohen. So as a result, if she was the daughter of a Kohen, she'd no longer be able to eat truma. Because the marital relationship hasn't happened, there's a question: do we treat her as if the marital relations happened because she's essentially ready and anticipating having those marital relations, or do we say no? You wait until it actually happens. So the Tanakama, who we associate with Rebbe Meir in our Mishnah, says that no, we anticipate they're having marital relations, and so as a result, since that will make the wife prohibited to eat truma, we're going to prohibit her from eating truma now. Whereas Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon say no, let's look at her current status, and she presently is allowed to eat truma, and so we're going to allow her to continue to eat truma because she is not engaged in the marital relations. And so at the end of our learning yesterday, we introduced the topic of chuppah lipsolas. So that the idea is what happens, and we understood this according to Rashi, as basically being the situation where you skip the erisin, you go straight to the nisuin. And so the question is when you skip erisin and go straight to nisuin, straight to the chuppah, is that considered like erisin? Is it considered worse than erisin? What's the status? And you can see how this topic is on some level related to the Mishnah, because again, a person has gone through one aspect of the marriage ceremony without the other. And so the question is, so for example, if a widow went straight to, again, a widowed daughter of a Kohen went straight to chuppah with a Kohen Gadol. So, again, we have, and that's the explanation that Rashi offers to the situation. So we have two potential opinions. Rav says that the chuppah has legal significance, i.e. it's treated like marital relations. And so as a result, even if the couple did not engage in marital relationships, in a marital relationship, she is not allowed to eat truma any longer. Shmuel says no. There's no legal significance to it. And so as a result, no legal significance to the chuppah alone, since she did not engage in, there was no kedushin or erisin, kedushin and erisin being effectively two terms for the same basic thing, that there was no kedushin or erisin with her, and so as a result, the chuppah has no legal significance. And so as a result, because it has no legal significance, she can continue to eat truma. And Shmuel added that where did Rav say that there was legal significance? It was only where there's a physical possibility of engaging in marital relations. And therefore, if the girl is of a very young age, specifically under 3 years and a day, so then since marital relations with such a girl has no legal significance, so therefore that would a chuppah with such a girl would also have no legal significance, and she would not be limited in her ability to eat truma. Now, again, neither Rav nor Shmuel had tied this debate to our Mishnah. So that changes as we now pick up on the second to last line of Nun Zayin Bet, third to last word on the line, Amar Rabbi Chama, and we get the third view. And the third view is Amar Rabbi Bar Chama, Yesh Chuppah L'Psulos, that in fact there is Chuppah L'Psulos, but Banu L'Machlokas Rabbi Meir Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. That we come to a machlokas between the argument between Rabbi Meir on the one hand and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon on the other hand, that we had in our Mishnah, meaning that the machlokas, that this question of whether or not we say yesh chuppah or ein chuppah l'psulos, that is going to be tied to the question in our Mishnah. So le Rabbi Meir, as we turn to the top of Nechadam and Aleph, le Rabbi Meir to Amar Kedushin Paslei, that when it comes to Kedushin that causes the woman to be unable to eat truma, chuppah nami pasla. So too, if they engage only in chuppah without kedushin, that would also cause her to be disqualified. But Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, the Amri kedushin lo pasli. But according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, who say that kedushin does not disqualify her, so chuppah nami lo pasla. So too, the chuppah doesn't disqualify her, and so she would be able to eat, continue to eat truma. But now the Gemara is going to undermine that effort and say that is not a valid argument. That is not, in fact, the case. And so, because we can actually argue that both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon could say their opposite opinion with respect to Chuppah Psulos. That in fact, in that situation, you could say the following. Mimai, how do you know that in fact these are connected? Dilma ad kan lo kama Rabbi Meir hasam. That the only reason in our Mishnah Rabbi Meir says that it's not that she's no longer allowed to eat truma el b'kedushin de kanila, because the kedushin serves as an acquisition. Indeed, you need to have certain das with respect to kedushin that is not necessary with respect to chuppah, and so as a result, that that's an acquisition, and so as a result, that's why the transaction results in her not being able to eat truma any longer. About chuppah, the lo kanila, but chuppah doesn't actually effectuate an acquisition, and so as a result, there is no lo. Maybe he would not disqualify her. Maybe he would say that she's allowed to eat truma. Inami, or you could go in the opposite direction. Ad kan lo ka'amrei Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon hasam. That when in our Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon said that she's allowed to continue to eat truma el b'kedushin de lo krivi levia. That is because that kedushin is not the immediate preceding step that enables a husband and wife to engage in marital relations. Again, it's the marital relationship that is causing her to become a halala and causing her to thereby be disqualified from kahuna and therefore not able to eat truma. And so since it's the actual marital relationship that is going to cause the problem, and since kedushin is not the immediate preceding step to marital relations, you need to also engage in chuppah. So that's why they, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, say that she can continue to eat truma. But maybe here, where in fact we're talking about chuppah, which is the immediately preceding step to engaging in marital relations, maybe they would agree with Rabbi Meir and say that in fact she's not allowed to eat truma. So therefore, we're going to revise what Rabbi Bar Chama said and try and link up our Mishnah to this debate regarding Chuppah L'Psulos in a different way. Tonight. So let's, instead of tying it to our Mishnah, let's see about the following brisa, and maybe we can tie it to this brisa. We have a brisa with the machlokas between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So let's first get the Tana Kama's position. We're then going to break down the Tana Kama's position and understand what kind of case it's talking about. We'll effectively reread that part of the brisa, and then we'll hear the opposing view. So what does the brisa say to Tanya? Because we learned in a brisa, if either a ksheros upsulos, whether a woman is kosher or puzzle for marrying a kohen, if they went through nisuin, or they went and did chuppah but did not have marital relations, ochlos mishalo, they are able to eat from ochlos petruma. They are able to eat from their husband, the kohen's property, and they are able to eat the husband's truma. Now, 1 second. We just said that even if they're not fit for kahuna, so we don't understand. That's a confusing statement. Now, the second part of our statement makes sense, right? They did not have marital relations, so maybe that would be like Rebbe Lazar and Rabbi Shimon. But in the first part of the statement, nichnasu, when it says that they went in, miklal de nisu mamish, that it implies that they did nisuin and they actually engaged in marital relations. But that can't be, because if they engage in marital relations, and this brisa is also talking about a woman who is not allowed to marry a kohen, then of course she's not allowed to eat truma. How could that be? So elalav kigon shenichnasu l'chuppah v'lo nivalu. So when the brisa says oh shenichnasu l'chuppah v'lo nivalu, that's a typo, essentially. That is really what is meant to be, is to say, for example. So when we say that the nisu, that they engaged in nisuin, we're talking about such as where they went through chuppah, but they did not in fact engage in marital relations. And so what do we see from this? We see that if they go through chuppah and don't engage in marital relations, we will not disqualify the woman. So too, that would suggest by our case of chuppah lipsulos, that just because they went in through nisuin, through chuppah, that if they didn't engage in marital relations, we will not disqualify her. So that would be like Shmuel's perspective in our, that we saw yesterday, that it would say in chuppah psulos. All right, and then vikatani, and then we continue on, right? Ochlos mishul, and we say, what about that? Oh, right, ochlos mishulova, ochlos betruma, that they can eat from the husband's, the kohen's property, and from truma, and so that all makes sense. That's the view that we had of Shmuel, of Ein Chuppah L'Psulos. Rabbi Yishmael beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, and on the other hand, we have the opposing view, Kol shebiyasa ma'achilasa. Anytime where cohabitation, where the marital relations enables her to eat, chupasa ma'achilasa, then doing the chuppah also enables her to eat. But Kol she'ein biyasa ma'achilasa, and whenever the marital relations would not allow her to eat, or it makes her unfit to eat, so ein chupasa ma'achilasa. So then the chuppah also makes her unfit to eat. So the implication is mimai dilma Rabbi Yishmael beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Rabbi Meir svirale. Maybe Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, is like Rabbi Meir. The Amar kedushin lo achla. So and says that kedushin is not able to eat. So Rabbi Meir is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So hi kol she'ein biyasa ma'achilasa ein chupasa ma'achilasa. And again, whenever they marital relations doesn't enable her to eat, so then chuppah doesn't enable her to eat. So kol she'ein biyasa ma'achilasa ein kaspa ma'achilasa mibailei. So 1 second, if that were true, that in fact Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Meir were exactly the same. So I'm sorry, let's back up just a step. So now we had this possibility of saying that Rabbi Yishmael ben Broka is like Rav, saying yesh chuppah l'psulos, and the Tanakama is like Shmuel and saying aim psulos. But now we're going to say mimai, maybe. When we gave Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka's position, maybe that position is not actually like Rav, but rather like Rabbi Meir. Remember, we rejected the fact that Rabbi Meir is saying anything about yesh psulos or yesh chuppah l'psulos or ein chuppah l'psulos, because we said that he could potentially even say ein chuppah l'psulos because there was no kedushin. And so maybe we're going to say that maybe Rabbi Yishmael ben Osho Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is just like Rabbi Meir. And so he would agree with Rabbi Meir. The Amar Kedushin lo achal, that what is it that prevents the woman from being able to eat? It is the Kedushin, not the chuppah. But one second, Hai kol she'ein biyasam achilasa, ein kupasam achilasa. But the brisa that we just quoted doesn't tie the marital relations to Kedushin, it ties it to chuppah. And if in fact Rabbi Yishmael was saying like Rabbi Meir, well then it should say kol she'ein biyasam achilasa, ein kaspam achilasa mibailei. It should have said that ein kaspam achilasa, that even engaging in Kedushin won't enable her to eat. V'dilma, so Dilma Aidi de Amar Tanakama chuppah. Amar ihu nami chuppah. So no, you can't necessarily say that Rabbi Yishmael disagrees with Rabbi Meir. Maybe the reason that Rabbi Yishmael talks about chuppah at the end of this brisa is because at the beginning of the brisa, the Tanakama talked about chuppah, and so in fact, really, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yishmael would have the same opinion, and so as a result, you cannot necessarily tie the machlokas of yesh chuppah l'psulos or ein chuppah l'psulos to either our Mishnah or to this brisa. So as a result, we just have to recognize that though they're potentially two separate disagreements. And now we're going to turn and try and give support to Rav's view of yesh chuppah l'psulos. Yesh chuppah l'psulos. So Amar Rav Amram, Hai Milsa Amar Lan Rav Sheshis. That Rav Sheshis told us the following: Anahirnu la'ainin mimasnisin. We can see better by looking at our Mishnah. Our eyes could have better light if we look at our Mishnah. How? Yesh chuppah l'psulos, and we would see that in fact there is legal significance to a chuppah, the Tanatuna, and we can use this, and not from our Mishnah, but from the Tana of the following Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in Sota, Daf Yud Chet Amud Aleph. So, what did it say in the Mishnah there? Amen. So the Torah has an oath that the Kohen, when a woman is accused of being secluded with someone that the husband suspects her of having an affair with, and then she is brought to the Kohen to go through the Sota process because she was caught being secluded with such a man. So in that process, the Kohen makes an oath, and she says amen, amen to it. And so the Mishnah in Sota is explaining what is it that she is saying amen to. Amen shelo satisi arusa unesua shomeres yavam uchnusa. That I have not gone astray. I have not, slept with another man when I was an arusa, meaning after I engaged in kedushin, or nisuin, or after I had done nisuin, or if I was waiting for yibum, or even after having been married in yibum. So all four of these cases, basically she's saying, no matter what applies to me, I was not unfaithful. So our understanding at the moment is that effectively we're saying that in all four of these cases, one could have a sota accusation. And so we're going to break it down and understand how that there could be such a sota accusation in all of these cases. And through that, we will try to prove Rav's position of yesh chuppah l'psulos. So let's see how we do that. So Hay Arusa Hechidami. What is the case where an Arusa, somebody who has only gone through Kedushin, could be accused of something and have to drink the sota waters. So ilema dekanila kashehi arusa. If you say that she was warned where the husband, while she was in arusa, the kamashkala kashehi arusa, and now, and then she's going to be forced to drink the bitter waters while she's in arusa, the sota waters while she's in arusa. Arusa bas mishchiyahi is in fact an arusa subject to a sota. No, she's not. V'hatnan, we learned arusa v'shomeres yavam lo shotos v'lo nodlos ksuba. Those a woman who is in arusa or awaiting yibum, they do not drink the sota waters, and they do not collect a ksuba if their husband dies. So in all those situations, they are that's the status that they have. So we see that the arusa doesn't drink. So it can't be talking, when we say an arusa, it can't be talking about where she was in arusa when she was warned, she was in arusa when she secluded, and she was in arusa when she drank. So ella dekanila kishehi arusa. So it must be that she was warned. He was jealous of her, and she was warned while she was in arusa, the istatra, and then she secluded while she was in arusa, the kamashka la kishehi nesua, and then she's being asked to drink after they get married. So mibadke la maya. So in second, and so, but in that case, would in fact the waters work? Because vahatanya, the nikah ha'ish me'avon, that the Torah says during the course of the Sota passage that the man is free from sin, and we learn from those words. Bisman sha'ish menuka me'avon hamayim bod kines ishto, ein ha'ish menuka me'avon ein hamayim bod kines ishto. But the waters will only work if the husband is free of sin. If he's not free of sin, then they won't work. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that if a man accuses his wife of having an affair, he's not allowed to engage in marital relations with him. So as a result, our assumption at the moment is that if they had only done erisin, and now it's time for nisuin, they won't be able to do nisuin, because presumably part of the nisuin is the consummation of the marriage through marital relations, and he's not allowed to do that. So ella dekanila kashehi arusa. So it must be that what the situation is that he again warned her when she was in arusa, the istatra, and she secluded herself while she was in arusa, the nichnasa lechuppah v'lo nivala, and then they went to the chuppah and they did not have marital relations. Ushma mina yesh chuppah l'psulos. And so we see that in fact it has to be that they did not have marital relations. They did do chuppah, and the whole and all of this shows that chuppah makes a difference. That chuppah does allow her to drink. So there's legal significance to a chuppah without marital relations, and a chuppah in particular where it's on some level prohibited. So just as the chuppah, so the point is that just as this chuppah makes a difference, even though they're not allowed to be engage in marital relations, so too there would be a legal significance to just going through chuppah without having marital relations. If a Kohen Gadol were to go through chuppah with a widow, or a regular Kohen were to go through chuppah with a divorcee or a chalutza. All right. So Amar Rava, no, this is not necessarily a good proof. The Tispra daha misratzta lehi. 1 second. You think that that's that this Mishnah is right? Bahaki asa Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina midaroma. Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina taught from the south. Asa va'aiti b'masdisa b'dei, and he taught the following brisa: Mibal adei ishech. The fact is that the Torah says that it refers to marital relations, and it refers to a man other than your husband. So the point is, Mishakadma Shchivas Baal Laboel. You need to have marital relations with the husband prior to the other man having marital relations with her. V'lo Shakadma Shchivas Boel Labal. And you can't have a situation that is going to be covered by sota, where the adulterer has marital relations with the wife before the husband ever had marital relations with the wife. But if we are assuming that we are talking about a case where the woman was warned when she had done Kedushin, and then was secluded when she had done Kedushin, and then they get married with chuppah without bia, and they don't have any marital relations, but they do chuppah, so then that would be a situation where if in fact she had had marital relations with somebody other than her husband, those marital relations would happen before any marital relations with her husband. And so that can't be. The teaching of Rav Acha Bar Chanina says that you can't have that. So we have to, so our new understanding of this Mishnah does not work. We need to figure something else out. So Amar Rami Bar Chama, Rami Bar Chama offers the following. We can in fact find a situation where the wife did have marital relations with her husband, but then goes through chuppah without marital relations. How is that? So they had marital relations when she was only engaged, when she had only done erisin, and they had not yet done nisuin, but they engaged in marital relations. And so as a result, that is the situation where the process would be, she engaged in, they did erisin, they engaged in marital relations. So we've checked the box that Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina raised when he came from the south. And then the husband became jealous and warned her. And then she secluded with the man that she was warned against. And then they did chuppah without any marital relations, because they can't engage in marital relations because he has to be innocent. He cannot have done anything wrong. And once he accuses her of of an affair, he's not allowed to engage in marital relations with her. And so, and then she drinks the sota water. So that could be the explanation of the situation where the concern is about when she was an erusa. So the kavase gabi. But when second, the problem is the kavase, according to this, gabi shomeris yavam, sheba aleha yavam bebeis chamiha. If you want to try and do the same parallel, because remember, there were 4 cases that were talked about in our Mishnah. There was the erusa, the nisua, so that's the traditional marriage process. But then there was also the shomeris yavam, meaning somebody who is waiting to have yibum done with her or done chalitza, and then the one who was actually done with. But we know from the very beginning of the last perek that that yibum does not require any intention. If you engage in marital relations, so that's enough, and you are married with the yevamah. The yavam and the yevamah will be married as a result. So as a result, so we return to Nunchet Bet, Shomeris Yavam Karisla, right? She's called somebody who's waiting to perform yibum. Ishto Ma'al Yehi. But in fact, if they had engaged in that marital relationship, then she would be his full wife. Daha Amar Rav Kana Lakol. Rav himself is the one who says that whatever basis, whatever your thinking is, even if you engage in some lesser version of marital relations, meaning you thought that it wasn't going to enable you to marry her, or the person was forced, or you thought it was a different person, in all those situations, Rav says that they're fully married completely. So the Gemara answers, all right, so Kishmuel, we'll say that it's like Shmuel, because what is Shmuel? Say the Amar Lokana El Dvarim Ha'amurim Kapaparsha, that she's not fully married. She's only married to accomplish 2 things, to the things that were specifically said in the Torah in connection with Yibum, namely that the husband gets to inherit the brother, and that all the other co-wives, they could go free. But in terms of her status as his actual wife, Shmuel says that she's not a full wife. So as a result, that could be a situation where, again, she was Shomeris Yavam. They engaged in marital relations where it wasn't a full marital relationship. And so as a result, they are not fully married, according to Shmuel. Then she's a suspect. by the husband, and so she's warned. Then she engages in seclusion, and then they go through the marriage ceremony, and then they and that enables her to then drink the sota waters during the time when she was not or then even then they engage in the marital relations at the end, and it's not intended to enable them to be married. So as a result, it's sufficient for her to be marital relations for her to be considered married, but it's not a sufficient marital relations for him to have been guilty of anything or for her to be a full wife. So the bottom line is so that could be the situation. Well, but the problem with all of that is that we were trying to support Rav. And now you're going to tell me that this only works according to Shmuel? Midihu taima elul Rav. The whole point of us explaining this Mishnah in Sota is about providing support for Rav. Ha'amar Rav kanalakol. And Rav himself is the one who says that it's a full acquisition, that they are fully married. So therefore, here's what we got to be talking about. Kigon de avad b'mamar, that we're talking about where there was she was a shomeris yavam, there was suspicion, and she was warned. She then secluded, and then they did mamar. And so mamar, of course, does not involve marital relations, but just saying that you're in the intention, as we've seen previously. And uve shamai hida amri mamar kone lekinyan gomer. And that Mishnah, when it was talking about a situation where a shomeris yavam could potentially be in the parsha of Sota, could be subject to the Sota waters, it's talking about according to Beis Shammai, because according to Beis Shammai, there's possibility for Mamar does a full acquisition, makes her fully his wife, and so therefore we can have a situation where they're fully married and there's no marital relations, so therefore it all works. So ihachi hainu arusa. But 1 second, if you're saying that, then really there is no difference between the Shomeris Yavam situation and the Arusa situation. Why did we need to list them separately? Well, 1 second, right back at you. Nisua uchanusa lav chada milsahi. Aren't Nisua and Kenusa the same thing? Meaning a woman who does Nisuin and a woman who has been married with Yibum, we say that once they're married for everything in Yibum. And so as a result, there's really no difference between the two of those situations. Rather, it's just trying to go through all 4 cases. It is not trying to say that each case is a unique situation that has no comparability to the other situations. So those 2 situations are comparable. They are similar to one another. And so as a result, that could be the explanation. And so all of this comes to say the following. So what have we done? What we've done is we've said that this Mishnah in Sota could actually be understood to support Rav. How? Because Rav says yesh chuppah l'nesuin, that there is a legal significance to yesh chuppah l'psulos, that there is chuppah with a woman who a Kohen's not allowed to marry, and that the chuppah has legal significance, because in fact we've found that when the situation in Sota, what do we say? We say that the person also talks about having marital relations and being a potential Sota while she was a Rusa, while she was only Kedushin had happened before Nisuin. And we saw that situation must involve a case in which there were no marital relationships associated with the chuppah. And so we can see that chuppah, just as the chuppah with no marital relationships allows a woman to have the Sota waters, so she's considered having gone through Nisuin. She's considered there is legal significance to that chuppah, even though the man and the woman were not allowed to engage in marital relations because the man had suspected her of an affair. And yet we say that chuppah has legal significance because it enables the woman to drink the sota waters. So too, as Rav says, yesh chuppah l'psulos, that so to a Kohen, when he engages in nisuin with a woman who is not, he's not allowed to engage in marital relations, there is legal significance to that as well. But now we're going to offer two other explanations for this Mishnah that have nothing to do with Rav. We don't actually have to say that Mishnah supports Rav. So first is Rav Papa. Rav Papa Amar, no, that is not about, you've made this way more complicated in trying to support Rav. That rather the person who says this Mishnah, Hai Tanahu, is the person who taught the following brisa, Titanya. Ein makanin la arusa lahashgosa kishehi arusa. You're not allowed to warn an arusa, and cause her to drink while she is in arusa. Aval makanin oso lahashgosa kishehi nesua. You can only warn her to drink when she is a nesua. And so as a result, the point is that clearly the author of this brisa disagrees with the brisa that was quoted by Rava, and presumably he also disagrees with the author of the brisa that says that the husband must be free of sin. And so the point is that we can understand the brisa and the Mishnah very simply. The point is that she engaged. They warned her. The husband warned her, and you can't drink while you're in arusa. So your husband warned her. She was secluded. Then they did a full nisuin with marital relations, and then the husband says, "Okay, I suspected you." And we don't worry. The author of this brisa is not worried about whether or not the husband was pure in his was free of sin, or at least that the sin of having marital relations in connection with marrying the woman that he's going to now suspect is not in fact going to undermine his ability to have her drink the sota waters. And we're not going to worry about who has marital relations with the wife first. None of that matters. You can just have a case of erisin, then the woman is suspected and warned, and then she secludes, and then they get married and have marital relations, and then the man takes her and has her drink the sota waters. So all of that can happen, and all of that can work according to the author of this other brisa. Or alternatively, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, Al Yedei Gilgal, even you, Rav Papa, have made things way more complicated than necessary. None of this is talking about where she's actually a sota as a result of something that she did while she was an arusa. Rather, the point is that we're making her swear. We're making her swear that she didn't have an affair. Well, once we're making her swear that she didn't have an affair, we're going to make her swear that she didn't have an affair at any point in time where she had some kind of connection with her husband. So from the moment that she was in arusa, she was not allowed to have an affair with somebody else. And so when we are going to have her swear, we're going to have her swear for the entire time that she was not supposed to have relations with anybody else. And so that's the oath that we're going to make her make. And it has nothing to do with whether or not she could become a sota as a result of some action that only happened between erisin and nisuin. No, you don't have to say that at all. Maybe no action could have made her a sota between erisin and nisuin. But once we're making her swear for something that she didn't engage in an affair after they were fully married, after nisuin, so we'll also make her swear that she didn't engage in an affair before they got fully married. Okay, so that responds to that. So we haven't actually proven that Rav or Shmuel is correct. I believe that, as we often say, that because the halacha is like Rav in connection with Isser Beheter, so too we would say here that that in fact we would say Yesh Chuppah Lipsula. Okay, so now we continue on, and now the Gemara is going to apply our Mishnah to the following context. So we have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are brothers who are Kohanim. Reuven married Rachel, the daughter of a Kohen, and then Reuven dies without children. Shimon now does ma'amar with Rachel. So this makes Rachel prohibited rabbinically to marry Levi, right? Because they are, Shimon and Rachel are connected. And even though Levi was a potential yavam for Rachel, because Shimon has done ma'amar with Rachel, now she's not allowed to marry any of the other brothers. However, that's only rabbinically. Biblically, there's still a connection. Rachel and Levi are still connected. You would still need chalitza in order to free her. And so, in connection with this case, we now have Rabbi Chanina making the following statement. So, Shalach Rabbi Chanina Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan, he says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ha'osa mamar bivimto, if one performs mamar with the widow, v'yesh lo ach, and he has another brother, afilu hu kohen v'hi kohenis. Now, even if he's a kohen and she's a bas kohen, salam in a truma, she's not allowed to eat truma. Why? Presumably, Leman, according to whom is this? So Elam, so let's actually say understand it outside, and then we'll look at inside. So presumably, the point is that because there is still this connection between Rachel and Levi, that they're still biblically connected, and that biblical connection would involve a rabbinically prohibited marital relationship. So if they engage in marital relations, that would be rabbinically prohibited. So just like we had in our Mishnah, where Rabbi Meir says that when you had a prohibited kedushin and we're worried about that marital relationship, we'll also say that you can't have truma. So just like Rabbi Meir, but now we're going to show that in fact this is very different from Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir in our Mishnah was talking about a prohibition that was biblical, and kedushin was and involved kedushin. So Laman, Rabbi Meir, if you want to try and say that this is in fact Rabbi Meir, so Amar to Amar Rabbi Meir Mishtameres Levi Absula Lo Acha, because it's because Rabbi Meir says that a woman, when she is anticipating and there's a possibility of engaging in a forbidden marital relationship, she's not allowed to eat truma. That is min d'oraisa. That is where it was a biblical issue. D'Rabbanan mi amar, but would he in fact say that in this case where there is only a rabbinically rabbinic prohibition for Levi and Rachel to engage in marital relations? So ve'ela Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. And now you want to say, if you want to say that it's like Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, now that's totally ridiculous. They allow somebody who's awaiting marital relations in a situation where it's a biblically prohibited marital relation to still eat truma, because they've only gone through kedushin. And now you're going to say that that when it's a rabbinically prohibited, we'll say that it's in fact they can't eat truma. Of course not. That's ridiculous. Elaki Asar Rabin Amar. So when Rabin came, he explained the following. No, Asar B'Mamar V'Vimto Divrei Akol Achal. Now, if it's a simple situation of the one that we just talked about, where they do mamar, everybody is fine with her eating. Yeshlo Achalal. However, if Levi is in fact a halal, meaning that he's not a valid Kohen, and as a result, he's not allowed to marry a bas Kohen. And that's biblical. Well, then divrei akol eina ochelas. So then everybody would agree that she's not allowed to eat, because now we are dealing with a situation where there's a woman that's anticipating a biblically prohibited marital relations. And lo nechlaku elisha nasan la get. But rather, where do Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, we'll hear in a moment that there's a disagreement. Where is there a disagreement? There's a disagreement only where there's a get. Because instead of a ma'amar, if we have a get, that causes separation. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ocheles, Reish Lakish Amar Ein Ocheles. That Rabbi Yochanan says that in a case where Shimon gives a get to Rachel, and so even though that get only causes a separation from a rabbinic perspective, and so now there's no possibility of yibum, but there's only the possibility of chalitza. So we'll still allow her to eat truma from her parents' home because even though there's still a connection between her and Levi, we're going to say that connection is not is already to some degree separated. But Reish Lakish Amar Ein Ocheles. No, Reish Lakish says no. There's still biblically a connection between Rachel and the Chalal Levi, Rachel and the non-kosher Kohen Levi, and so as a result, that's going to that anticipated marital relationship is going to be problematic. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ocheles. So why does Rabbi Yochanan say that she can eat? So now we're going to explain it inside. Afilu Rabbi Meir. Even according to Rabbi Meir in our Mishnah, she'd be allowed to eat because the Amar Eina Ocheles. Because when does he say that she's not allowed to eat? Hani mili mishtameres labia psula doraisa. That's only where it's a problem doraisa. Aval derabanan achla. So where it's only rabbinic, and here in the case of a Yevamah who got a get, the only issue is one in which it's where there's a prohibition to engage. The only prohibition is a rabbinic prohibition that to engage in that relationship. But Reish Lakish Amar Ein Ocheles. But Reish Lakish says no, she's not allowed to eat truma because Anafil Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon de Amri Ocheles, and even Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon who say that she's allowed to eat truma in our Mishnah, he says that you're not allowed to eat because Hani Mili Yeshlo Lahacha B'Makom Acher, because that's applies. Why is it that she's allowed to eat? Because a regular Kohen, if that Kohen were to marry, if that Kohen, instead of marrying this divorcee, was instead doing that same act with someone else, namely someone who he's not prohibited to marry, well then that woman would be allowed to eat truma. So as a result, we don't want to cause confusion, and so we'll allow this woman to also eat truma. Aval hacha, but in this case, there's no situation where a Kohen gives a get to a woman and that enables her to eat truma. So as a result, we're not going to allow a get to allow her to eat truma. 1 second, there is a case where a Kohen can give a get to a woman and enable her to eat truma. That's where he gives a get to a bas Kohen, and she goes back to her father's house. So choseres paskamine. Now that's because that get completely separates, an ordinary get completely separates the husband from the wife, and so as a result, she is free to go totally back into her father's house. However, in our case, we're not talking about a regular get. We're talking about a get in the context of yibum, and so as a result, so as a result, she leaves her husband's home and she goes back to her father's home. But avalha, in this case, where it's a yibum, agidabe, she is still connected to the husband, and so as a result, that connection effectively precludes her from eating. So we see that there are essentially two views of this case. So again, we're dealing with this case of Rachel, where there's a get that Shimon gives. So as a result, now that's the debate between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So now we're going to go, tomorrow we'll go back to our Mishnah and see what happens in the case of divorce or death after the daughter of a Kohen marries a Kohen that she's not allowed to marry, whether it's a widow marrying a Kohen Gadol or a divorcee marrying a regular Kohen. What happens? What's the status? We saw that there was a difference in the Mishnah between an Erusin and Nisuin, and we'll take a look at that, God willing, tomorrow. So stay tuned tomorrow for that discussion. Have a wonderful day.